as well, too.
Pain as well. And so then the liberation of that energy, all of a sudden, from this center all the way to the top of the brain, begins to create a powerful polarity. Positive charge at the head and negative charge at the tail, and the body becomes like a magnet. And all of a sudden, you start to produce this invisible electromagnetic field. Now the body is liberating energy. Now, once the pineal gland is signaled, it sends a direct signal to the pituitary. The pituitary begins to release two very powerful metabolites called oxytocin and vasopressin. Oxytocin signals nitric oxide. Nitric oxide causes the arteries in the heart begin to swell, and all of a sudden you feel an incredible amount of love. Oxytocin is the love chemical. When you feel love and gratitude, all of a sudden you're in a state of receivership. And then there's a reverse field that begins to come in the other direction. We've measured this. And that second chemical is called vasopressin. And what vasopressin does is it causes the cells to draw water. So people with chronic bladder infections, people with diverticulitis, people with food allergies and indigestion, acid reflux.
You have them all do the same breath.
They do the same breath, and it's just the liberation of energy. And once that energy starts to move and it starts to travel up to the brain, we've measured this on so many brain scans. We can actually predict when it's going to happen.
Have you seen differences with how quickly this up-leveling happens when people actually have this added layer of intentionality to it, like you mentioned about having this intention of making love to your brain, or you drawing the energy and the intention from something else that maybe you would do with passion and infusing it into the practice?
we play really, really inspiring music, and we motivate them. And so when they assign meaning to what they're doing, in other words, when they inhale and they pull that energy all the way up into their brain, I ask them to hold their breath and squeeze those muscles a little bit more. And when you hold your breath and squeeze those muscles, you increase what's called intrathecal pressure. And intrathecal pressure is what you use when you lift something up and you push against your insides. Well, the pineal gland sits right at the base of the third ventricle. And inside the pineal gland are these tiny little calcium carbonate crystals. They're stacked rhombohedrons. They're stacked on top of each other. And if you find the research, and I found it, the pineal gland has been called a neuroendocrine transducer with piezoelectric properties. Now, those are just big words. But piezoelectric effect is when you take a mechanical stress and you apply it to some crystals, and it begins to produce an electric charge. So then the act of inhaling and bringing that breath all the way to your brain with passion and squeezing those muscles, and yogis can do this really well, and holding your breath, you're exerting pressure against that pineal gland. And as you start to compress those stacked crystals, you begin to produce a piezoelectric effect. And you're taking a mechanical stress and you're turning it into an electrical charge. Now you're electrically activating those crystals. And those crystals are very sensitive to frequency. And all of a sudden, when they become electrically activated, pineal gland becomes like a radio antenna. And now it can pick up frequencies faster than the speed of light. Now, why is that important? Because your pineal gland right now is determining whether there's enough light in this room, and if there's enough light in this room, it'll make a neurotransmitter called serotonin. And serotonin gets your brain up and awake, and you can function with conscious awareness. But when the light diminishes and there's an inhibition of light, serotonin is transmuted into melatonin. Melatonin is the nighttime neurotransmitter. It helps us to go to sleep. But serotonin and melatonin are directly related to the wavelength of visible light. So then we're producing certain rhythms and chemicals in our normal waking day based on our environment. But when the pineal gland becomes electrically activated, it literally begins to produce a resonant electromagnetic field. And now that begins to send a signal out, and those crystals stretch until they can't stretch anymore, and then the field reverses and it compresses those crystals, and all of a sudden you have a little antenna right up in your pineal gland. And now it can pick up frequencies that are faster than the wavelength of light. That's called the quantum. And all of a sudden now it will pick up a frequency and transduce. And a transducer is like a television. It takes a frequency and turns it into a picture. And all of a sudden the person has an inner vision. And that inner vision is more real than the world we're sitting in right now. And melatonin then starts to turn into some very powerful chemicals. One of them, or two of them, are the most powerful antioxidants known to man. Anti-cancer, anti-aging, anti-heart disease, anti-stroke, anti-neurodegenerative, anti-inflammatory. Another chemical is the same chemical found in hibernating animals. No sex drive, no appetite, no preoccupation with the outer world. The inner world starts to become more real. The body moves into stasis. It's the same chemical where the caterpillar becomes the butterfly. Take the molecule, tweak it again, you have a benzodiazepine. Fits in the same receptors. What it does is it suppresses the survival centers in the brain. Take the molecule, tweak it again, and now you have the same chemical found in electric eels, a very powerful biophospholuminescent chemical. Tweak it one more time, and now you have dimethyltryptamine, the most powerful hallucinogenic known to man. And now, person's going on a vision, and that's why it's called the third eye. I call it the first eye because now it's releasing its elixirs, and we start having very profound dimensional experiences. So pulling the mind out of the body is beginning to liberate energy, and it begins to produce a magnetic field, electromagnetic field. But when the latent systems switch on, now we're going to access information no longer from our three-dimensional reality. We're going to access that information from the field, and the brain is going to begin to transduce that frequency carrying information into very profound imagery, and the person's going to have a full-on sensory experience without their senses, and it's going to be more real than the world we're sitting in.